It's time for the news bulletin on Channel 2. I am Bethha, and starting off with the main headlines of the day. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi says that historic Gaza deal to close Chapter 4. Foreign Minister Abdel Ati receives congratulatory calls over Gaza and heads to Paris for Gaza ministerial meeting. On behalf of President Sisi, Prime Minister Madbouli leads Egypt's delegation to the 24th COMESA summit. Welcome back. The news in full. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi said that the world is witnessing a historic moment that embodies the triumph of the will for peace over the logic of war. On his social media page, the head of state said that set from Sharm el-Sheikh, the city of peace and cradle of dialogue and understanding, an agreement was reached to ceasefire and end the war in Gaza after 2 years of suffering in accordance with a peace plan proposed by U.S. President Trump and under the auspices of Egypt, Qatar, and the United States of America. The president added that this agreement does not only close the Chapter 4, but also opens the door of hope for the people of the region for the future defined by justice and stability. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi welcomed the Gaza ceasefire agreement and hailed efforts by U.S. President Donald Trump, saying he's looking forward to sign the ceasefire deal as soon as possible. The president's remarks were made during his meeting with U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, and Senior Advisor to U.S. President Jared Kushner. During the meeting, President al-Sisi stressed on Egypt's keenness to continue cooperation with the United States to implement the ceasefire deal based on Trump's plan. The head of state also stressed Egypt's commitment to work with Washington to continue their path towards peace in the Middle East. President Sisi reiterated the significance immediate ceasefire to be implemented in the Gaza Strip without waiting for an agreement to be signed. He expressed high appreciation to the U.S. role as well as the Qatari and Turkish roles in supporting Egypt's mediation efforts in Sharm el-Sheikh negotiations. Also, President Sisi praised U.S. President Donald Trump's efforts to end conflicts and restore peace in the Middle East region and in the world. Egypt's foreign ministry hailed the recent positive developments in Sharm el-Sheikh, which represent a pivotal moment in the war in Gaza, hours after a deal was announced between Hamas and Israel. Meanwhile, Foreign Minister Badr Abdel Ati received phone calls from Arab, Islamic, African, European, and Asian counterparts welcoming the ceasefire agreement. During the phone calls, while top diplomats expressed high appreciation to the Egyptian wisdom leadership that led the path towards achieving the historic ceasefire agreement during Sharm el-Sheikh negotiations. This came as Egypt's top diplomat Badr Abdel Ati was heading to Paris for a ministerial meeting to discuss arrangements for the situation in the Gaza Strip after mediators Egypt, Qatar, and the U.S. and Turkey brokered the deal for the first phase of a Gaza ceasefire. The ministerial meeting called for by France will discuss the situation in Gaza Strip in light of the positive and historic developments in Sharm el-Sheikh being a turning point in the Gaza war. Foreign ministers and top officials from France, Italy, UK, Germany, Spain, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Indonesia, Turkey, USA, Canada, and European Union participate in the meeting. In a historic deal, mediators in the Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh announced that ongoing discussions currently taking place between delegations to put the final touches on the ceasefire deal after agreeing on the first phase of U.S. President Donald Trump's plan. After 3 days of negotiations in Sharm el-Sheikh, mediators said that an agreement was reached that led to an end to the war in Gaza in the release of hostages and prisoners and an entry of humanitarian aid. Details follow.
Israel and Hamas agreed Wednesday to pause fighting in Gaza Strip so that the remaining hostages there can be freed in the coming days in exchange for Palestinian prisoners, accepting elements of a plan put forward by the Trump administration that would represent the biggest breakthrough in months in the devastating 2-year-old war. U.S. President Donald Trump wrote on social media that all parties will be treated fairly. This means that all of the hostages will be freed in exchange for prisoners very soon, and Israel will withdraw their troops troops to an agreed-upon lines as the first step towards a strong, durable and everlasting peace. Israel and Hamas separately confirmed the counters of the deal, which drew cautious optimism from some in Gaza. Hamas intends to release all 20 living hostages in a matter of days, while the Israeli military will begin a withdrawal from the majority of Gaza. Both sides maintain an open-ended military presence inside Gaza along its border with Israel. An international force comprised largely of troops from Arab and Muslim countries would be responsible for security inside Gaza. The U.S. would lead a massive internationally funded reconstruction plan efforts in Gaza.
Reacting to the historic moment, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas hailed the Gaza ceasefire deal agreed by Israel and Hamas, saying he hoped it could lead to the establishment of an independent Palestinian state. In a statement on social media, Abbas welcomed the announcement by U.S. President Donald Trump of an agreement to cease the war on the Gaza Strip and expressed hope that these efforts would be a prelude to reaching a permanent political solution leading to an end to the Israeli occupation of the state of Palestine and the establishment of an independent Palestinian state. Palestinians rejoiced today after a ceasefire hostage deal was announced under the first phase of U.S. President Donald Trump's initiative to end the war in Gaza. Under the deal, fighting will cease, the Israeli occupation forces will withdraw from Gaza, and Hamas will free hostages in exchange for prisoners held by the Israeli Occupation Authority. A source briefed on details of the agreement said the occupation troops would begin pulling back within 24 hours of the deal being signed. In Gaza, where most of the 2 million people have been displaced by Israeli occupation bombing, young men applauded in the devastated streets even as Israeli occupation strikes continued. World leaders welcomed the announcement of a ceasefire and hostage release deal between Israel and Hamas, which could help end the 2-year war in Gaza. Jordan welcomed the ceasefire deal, with Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Ayman Safadi praising the efforts of Egypt, Qatar and United States for their role in the deal. Safadi stressed the need for aid to enter Gaza and said that Jordan was ready to resume aid deliveries. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called for all hostages to be released in a dignified manner and for a permanent ceasefire to be secured. Also, Turkey President Recep Tayyip Erdogan singled out his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump for praise, thanking him for demonstrating the necessary political will to encourage the Israeli government towards the ceasefire. European Union Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas called the deal a major diplomatic accomplishment, which was a real chance to end the conflict and release the hostages. Also, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer praised the diplomatic efforts of mediators Egypt, Qatar, Turkey and United States, as well as regional partners, to secure what he said was a crucial first step. The head of the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, Philip Lazzarini, called the announcement a huge relief and that it was ready to flood Gaza with desperately needed food and medicine. He said the agency had enough food stocks to feed the whole of Gaza for 3 months. Also, Director General of the World Health Organization, Tedros Adhanom, called the announcement a big step towards lasting peace. He added that the WHO stands ready to scale up its work to meet the dire health needs of patients across Gaza and to support rehabilitation of the destroyed health system. The Palestinian civil On behalf of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli led Egypt's delegation at the summit of the Common Market for East and South African countries, COMESA, currently taking place in Nairobi, Kenya. Addressing the COMESA summit, Madbouli said that Egypt believes that regional integration is a cornerstone of achieving sustainable development. Madbouli stressed Egypt's keenness on participating in COMESA projects. He also asserted the importance of boosting cooperation among COMESA state members and supporting the role of private sector to deal with challenges facing COMESA countries. The Prime Minister affirmed Egypt's support to launch electronic platforms to exchange information and investment opportunities. Also, Egypt's participation is based on commitment by the political leadership to support the COMESA efforts towards economic integration. The key regional gathering aspires to increase mutual trade exchange, joint investment, and support private sector role in development in African countries. The COMESA also seeks active steps towards enhancing economic ties among its member states, as well as cooperation between the gathering and the African continent in general. Welcome back. It's time for some economic news. Minister of Investment and Foreign Trade Hassan Al-Khatib reviewed with his Kenyan counterpart Li Qiangi means to activate joint cooperation the sidelines of the 24th summit of the Common Market for East and South African countries, COMESA, held in Nairobi, Kenya. Minister Hassan Al-Khatib expressed Egypt's keen interest to boost bilateral ties with Kenya in trade field within the bilateral framework, which aim at deepening the regional economic integration, as Kenya is seen as one of the largest trade powers in the COMESA. The two sides agreed to hold a joint trade committee and to activate the role of business communities in both countries to upgrade joint investment and trade cooperation. Minister of Petroleum and Mineral Resources Karim Badawi reviewed with the Executive President of Arquis Energy, a joint venture between British Petroleum and UAE Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, means to enhance partnership in the field of exploration and production of natural gas in the Mediterranean region. The meeting also followed up on current work plans in light of the company focus to expand its activities in the Egyptian market. Energy CEO expressed keen interest to increase his company investments in Egypt, describing the move as a top priority to his company, expressing confidence on attracting investment atmosphere in Egypt. Welcome back. Egypt qualified to the World Cup finals with a 3-0 win over Djibouti, becoming the third African side to book the place, while the Cape Verde Islands and Ghana both took a step closer to joining them. Superstar Mohamed Salah scored twice after Ibrahim Adel opened the scoring as Egypt beat Djibouti in Casablanca to take top place in Group A ahead of Burkina Faso, who won 1-0 away over Sierra Leone. Egypt, who have been to three previous World Cups, have earned 23 points in an unbeaten campaign and joined the already qualified Morocco and Tunisia at next year's tournament in North America.